Corner to Corner podcast. This is another instalment of our 6th Doctor celebrations, and this week, myself, Jeff, and his self,
Paul. Yes, Paul. Sorry, I wasn't aware that I had to interject there.
We're going to be taking a look at some 6th Doctor comics and some 6th Doctor Big Finish audio adventures, and then we're going to have a little look at the last adventure, which is the 6th Doctor's regeneration story that we finally got, courtesy of Big Finish. So, Paul, I'm going to pass over to you to start with, because you've been doing a bit of comic reading, haven't you?
I have, and I was delighted to do so, yeah, because when we started doing this 6th Doctor special series that we've been looking at, I thought we absolutely have to do the comics. We cannot talk about the 6th Doctor without talking about two, what I would say are very important, certainly seminal, epic comic strips that first appeared in the pages of Doctor Who magazine way back in the 80s, because and these were really important, you know, to me at the time and to a lot of other fans, not only for the fact that they were just really good, I mean exceptionally brilliant, also because we didn't see a lot of the 6th Doctor on TV. As you well know, there was a full series 22, then there was an 18-month hiatus, and then the return of the Doctor in the Trial of a Time Lord, which was half the length of the previous season and all the seasons prior to it. So it never felt like we got a huge amount of 6th Doctor on the TVs, but certainly in the pages of Doctor Who magazine, we had lots of lovely 6th Doctor stuff to talk about. So the first one of those, which was collected in this rather super hardback volume here, which arrived on my shelves with the Doctor Who complete series part works, like, you know, the 3,000 or so hardback books which go in depth on every Doctor Who story up to the end of Pete Capaldi's run. That's quite impressive.
Is that a green cover, or is it sun faded?
No, it is a green cover.
Oh, right.
It is very green. So for those of you who are just listening on audio only and can't see what I'm holding up, it is the collected works under the umbrella title Voyager. And that will ring a bell to many 6th Doctor fans of a certain age, I am sure. Now, the whole collection itself starts with a story called, and this is also very important, The Shapeshifter. Okay, see that there? Look at that lovely artwork. Now, The Shapeshifter is the introductory story for one of the 6th Doctor's most memorable off-screen companions, which is Frobisher. Okay, Frobisher is a Whiffadil. For those of you who do not know, Whiffadil, Xenadil, whatever, it doesn't really matter, except to say that he eventually decides to settle on the form of a penguin. Okay, which sounds kind of crazy, but you know what? It absolutely works. It just works brilliantly. And Frobisher is kind of introduced nameless in this story. He's literally just a shapeshifter, and it's a kind of a noirish private eye, you know, private investigator. You know, he talks like that kind of thing, or at least he does in my head. That's how Frobisher kind of sounds. And he hooks up with the 6th Doctor. They solve a crime together and, you know, defeat the bad guys. And then Frobisher decides to join the TARDIS crew, as it were. And there's some really nice moments between Frobisher and Perry as they kind of carry on. But, you know, things really sort of kick off with the story, the titular story of this collection, which is, of course, Voyager. I mean, just look at that artwork. It's astonishingly good. That? This is art by John Ridgway and script. The story is by Steve Parkhouse. Now, for anybody who knows that combination, that couple, that duo, if you like, is responsible for some of the very best Doctor Who comics, certainly the 80s and the 90s. They just seemed unstoppable. You know, a powerhouse of brilliant, adventurous, wildly imaginative, epic adventures from the 5th Doctor and also the 6th. And they're just crazy. And this story, Voyager, kind of starts with the Doctor having something of a premonition that he's tied to the wheel of an old sailing ship while some sinister figure in the background kind of controls him and pulls his strings. Now, that is the sinister figure there. You can't really see that, but that's how he's kind of drawn, sort of vampirish, ancient, wizened, high-collared, very important, thing. And kind of dude, and this goes on. I mean, it's over many parts. Look there's some more artwork there.
Wow.
of a vicious kraken. But look, planets in the sky. Honestly, if people who've read this will know what I'm talking about, and I'm not going to give away the story, but it goes on. I think it's over. I'm just going to check here. I think it's like 7 or 8 different parts. It is truly epic, and it starts. Yeah, there you go. It's 7 parts, and it starts very low key, as I said, with the Doctor's dream. And it's a story where Frobisher decides that he's going to be a penguin, and the thing is as well is that the relationship the Doctor has with Frobisher, or Frobisher's kind of its take is that the Doctor's not very sure about him because he's a shapeshifter. He tends to kind of shift into the mindset of whatever he's shifting into, all right, which kind of makes his behaviour slightly erratic. So if you remember in the Twin Dilemma, that it was the Doctor whose behaviour was erratic. So now the Doctor kind of has to be the sensible one, so to speak. So that's kind of where where all that happens. And as I said, Voyager itself, the story is truly epic. Now, Peri gets involved in these adventures as well. She's not forgotten about. Frobisher, the shape-shifting penguin, and the Doctor and Peri are all kind of involved in a whole bunch of adventures, some of which are really quite comical and slightly whimsical, and that plays to the Sixth Doctor's strengths. The Sixth Doctor, as we know, is very much a confident, egocentric, blustering kind of centre of the room, everybody look at me kind of guy, right? And that you don't lose any of that in the comics. It's still very much a part of his character, but it allows for some really interesting moments in the scripts of his comics. And there's some brilliant stuff. There's another story there, Exodus, where there's a bunch of refugees just suddenly appear in the TARDIS. And the Doctor's kind of outraged by it, really, and Peri kind of appeals to his compassion. And of course, the Doctor is compassionate, and they manage to kind of get them a decent, find them a home in the end. But it's that moment where you're not quite, where the Doctor initially is like, what are they doing in my TARDIS? Get rid of them, get them out, and Peri's like, no, come on. And Frobisher's there, kind of there as well. So anyway, so that's the first one. The next one,
just going to say, I'm just looking this Voyager one up online, and I'm finding it for minimum £85.
Really?
Maximum 275. It's a different one from what you've got. It's the same cover image, but it's
different image, different edition.
Yeah, it's a soft cover, and the cover
is it like this?
This kind of thing. It's more like that, yeah.
The World Shapers.
Yeah.
This is the other one, right? So this is a much older collection than that hardback thing that I've got there. But this was when is this from? I don't know when this is from actually. I think it's early 2000s or thereabouts. 2008. So nearly 22 years old. But
right.
But this is a collection of the other stories in the Doctor Who magazine, Sixth Doctor. Comic strips, and this is also the title of this. The title of the titular story of this collection, The World Shapers, is another epic adventure. And again, I don't want to give away the story too much, but I can't really talk about it without giving away the story. Let's just say that it involves Planet 14, which was first heard of in Doctor Who history in The Invasion, the Patrick Troughton second Doctor story with Cybermen. It also involves a trip to Marinus, which is a first Doctor story, right? The Keys of Marinus. It goes right the way back to that. And it also involves the return of a second Doctor companion. Okay, and all of this stuff kind of comes together in a sort of, in one respect, it's almost like continuity obsessed, but the way it ties those continuity elements together is is quite extraordinary because it doesn't allow them to take over the story, right? The story is it's very, very strong. There's a very strong kind of need for the Doctor to get involved and sort stuff out and figure out what's going on and put it right. But in the process, there's there's this other stuff which is not there as an add-on, right? It's not just let's mention Planet 14 for the sake of it. Let's not go to Marinus and bring in the old companion for the sake of it. It's all absolutely crucial to how the story wraps up, and how it kind of plays out and wraps up. So it's just epic. It really is. And again, and I remember reading this the first time round in Doctor Who magazine, and as soon as I saw the Doctor knock on the door of this shack and it was opened by his old companion from way back, I was like, oh my goodness. It was just one of those moments of warmth, that's just sort of takes over, like that real sort of nostalgia feeling that you kind of get. And it's just astonishing. This is, again, the art is by John Ridgway and the script is by Grant Morrison, who's another one of the classics of that, of those comics from that era. And there it is. I mean, the art is just, actually that's the one there, isn't it? That's the one where he finds his old companion. So I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't read it. Those of you who do read it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I just want to show you, if I can, the moments where, because there are some epic kind of strip, sort of pages on this. I don't know if they really sort of come across. Between times, there's also some other little stories. There you go. Let me just show you this. That's the title page for the first part of the World Shapers. So it's pretty awesome. Yeah. There's some full covers there. So we got the Vords. The Vords are back. Remember those guys in the diving suits from the end of it? And there's another sort of full page pull out. Yeah, nice Marinus dried up. Yeah. Dried up Marinus. All the seas have gone. What could have happened? Oh, you'll have to read it to find out. But yeah, wow, I didn't know I could potentially be sitting on hundreds of pounds worth of stuff there. I've got no intention of letting them go, but offers will be welcomed and laughed at.
Have you read The Age of Chaos, which is the one that Colin himself wrote?
Yes, I have. Again, it's astonishing. I do really enjoy the Doctor Who magazine strips and the Age of Chaos as well, which was something very different, I think, wasn't it? Was it, or was it not? I can't remember now, but yes.
I haven't read it. It's also quite pricey, but it was the first sort of full-length kind of graphic novel that was printed separately or something like. There was something a little bit different like that about it. It's the only one to have been written by a doctor, actor
himself.
But Colin's written in other stuff. In what's it called? There's a brilliant book. It's got Jodie on the front, and it was Tales from Lockdown or something like that, and there's various stories in there from different authors, and Colin wrote one of them, and it's got different doctors and different adventures in it. Have you got it?
Was it this one? The Target storybook?
Hold it up.
That?
No, it's not that one. No.
There is a story in there by Colin Baker, though.
Maybe that's the one I'm thinking of.
It is called. Yeah, look. If you look on the cover, where is it? Can you see it there? Interstitial Insecurity by Colin Baker.
No, this is.
So it's not that, but nonetheless,
Yeah,
Colin
Adventures
is a
in
very
Lockdown.
creative guy.
Oh, I must be thinking of that one. Sorry. So Adventures in Lockdown has got stories from Chris Chibnall, Paul Cornell, Russell T Davies, Neil Gaiman, or perhaps we shouldn't mention him now, Mark Gatiss, Pete McTee, Stephen Moffat, Vinay Patel, and Joy Wilkinson. And it's got a message from the Doctor, things she thought whilst falling, which is the moment between the TARDIS ejecting 13 and her landing in the train. The Terror of the Umpty-Ums, which is a Moffat one, which is really good, and it's quite.
I remember that one.
It's quite clever, as you might expect from him. Russell T has done Doctor Who and the Time War, Revenge of the Nestine. Gaiman wrote Rory's Story, One Virtue and a Thousand Crimes. Joy Wilkinson wrote The Simple Things. And Pete McTighe wrote Press Play, which is where Susan appears to 13, which is a lovely story. So yeah, it's a really, really good book actually, and if anyone listening hasn't checked it out, I recommend picking that up. So yeah, I'd like to read some of the Sixie comics, but I haven't got a £300 spare at the moment.
Yeah. I'd post them out to you, but I don't trust the post, sadly. So when we next meet up in person,
yes,
I may give you a photocopy or something.
I'll have to.
I'll photocopy some pages and give you those. hand them to you.
Yeah.
But these are not leaving my cold dead fingers.
That's
you have to claw them off me.
Yeah.
Yes, you will.
I've got some of the.
I'm a hoarder.
10th, 11th, and 12th and 13th collected DWM issues, which are really nice. So, if anyone listening has read any of the Sixth Doctor comics, let us know what you think and what your favourite is.
Yeah, I mean they're epic.
I would really like to read them. Yeah. So let's move on to looking at our top 5 Sixth Doctor audios from Big Finish. Ooh. Now, this is I say top 5 because
it's very difficult.
It is very difficult because basically they're all really good. I've listened more to the sort of more recent audios, and I would suspect yours is more from their, the monthly range.
Choose your words very careful, my friend.
Because that's what you've listened to a lot of. And in here, I've got some individual stories, which are part of the monthly range, some individual stories from box sets, and some box sets. So it's a bit of a mix.
Bit of a mix, bit of potch, as they say.
Yes, a little bit, yeah. So, I'm going to kick this off. I'm going to start at numero 5.
Numero 5.
Yeah, if anyone has listened to us before, they can probably guess what my number 1's going to be, but we'll get there in time. So, in at number 5...
I think I can guess what it's going to be.
This is Order of the Daleks. So, this is... it's got this great cover where there's a kind of stained glass Dalek body, and you might have seen there is a guy who goes around as Davros at cons and stuff, and he has a similar Dalek casing that he's built, which looks really cool. So Strelin is a planet on which the inhabitants have no advanced technology or knowledge of other worlds, so they're sort of quite content in themselves and simple in some ways, that they there's no technology, they don't know about anything else outside of their world, which in some ways is quite nice, really. It's a protected planet and no one can land on it without being an official from the galactic census, so they kind of it's a bit like the tribe in the the Amazon or something, that no one interferes with, So a signal starts emanating from the planet, and no one there should be able to make anything like this because they don't have the tech for it. So the Galactic Census go to investigate it, and of course the Doctor and Constance Clarke also pick up this signal and go in to investigate it as well. So they discover a group of reclusive monks on the planet, calling themselves the Brotherhood of the Black Petal. They've always got to have, ominous names like that, haven't they? And they are in possession of a secret so terrible that it could threaten the whole galaxy. So the secret will come as no surprise based on the story title, and of course they have an evil galaxy-conquering scheme in play. So this one has got kind of it riffs on kind of medieval monks. There's some mind control.
What's it called again?
Order of the Daleks.
I think I've got that one. That's Brotherhood of the Daleks. Maybe it's just
okay. Yeah, this is good fun. This one. The Daleks are trying to build new casings to be able to get themselves back to their position of power, and there's some mind control things going on there as well. So yeah, that's a cracking one. So if you want Sixth Doctor Dalek action, I highly recommend Order of the Daleks. So what's your number 5?
My number 5, I had to think about this one actually, but it is actually more recent than you might suspect. You're right, a lot of my other ones are from older Big Finish years, right? But it is I'm going to hold it up for you.
Criss
Can you
Cross.
see? Criss Cross.
Bugger it.
Yes.
That's my number 4.
Oh, there you go. You can change that then in that case. But no, do you know what? I probably wouldn't have listened to this if it hadn't been for you, and for Miranda Rayson, who we interviewed. Right. So Miranda Rayson plays the Doctor's new companion. This is her debut story, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's still sealed up because obviously I haven't actually listened to it on CD. I've listened to it on the download.
Yeah.
Because nowadays you get downloads as part of it, right? They don't really do the hard media, physical media anymore.
No,
so my physical media is still in its packet.
Yeah, they do some things with physical releases still, but it's quite often limited numbers. Yeah,
and I think some of the old titles now they're not printing the CDs at all, are they? So
enough,
exactly. Yeah, I can see why. And I did buy a batch of them up before they disappeared entirely. But so Crisscross, I wouldn't have listened to it if I hadn't been talking to you and Miranda about it during our interview. And I thought, well, Miranda is fabulous, and we had such a really good chat with her, didn't we?
Yeah.
I thought, well, I've never actually heard any Constance Clarke stuff, so I went back. I got that first box set, where she's. She has that kind of little story arc going on in her intro, and I love this story. I think it's brilliant. I think it's Matt Fitton at his absolute best. And one of the things I just love about it, as well as the setting and the actual story itself, is the kind of the character drama between it, the interplay between everybody there. So there's a kind of a mystery at the center of it, and not all of that is resolved because it involves stuff that is played out through later, sort of the following stories sort of dives in and out, doesn't it? And then there's a big resolution, but it's fabulous. And Miranda herself, it just seemed to me that Colin Baker can carry any story on his own because he always seems so full of energy, and his Doctor is just so indelible, so much larger than life that he could do a whole monologue and I would be riveted. So to have somebody like Miranda Rayson come in and sort of meet him at that level, it's not downplaying anybody else who's in the audios with Colin, but it's a refreshing change in the dynamic, because because Mrs Constance Clarke, the fact that the Doctor will always introduce her as my friend Constance, and she'll say Mrs Clarke, correcting him. Right?
She won't let she never lets anyone call her Constance, and then until so. Well, just to fill in on this one a bit, so. Mrs Constance Clarke is a Wren in the war.
She is, and this is her at Bletchley Park, isn't it?
That's it, where the Enigma machine and stuff was done, and the Doctor has been working undercover there for a while because a phrase keeps coming up within some signals and stuff, doesn't it? And so he's investigating, and he upsets another Wren by putting her on like long shifts or something. So Mrs Constance Clarke comes to basically kick his butt.
She has it out with him, doesn't she?
Yeah, and then they get drawn into it.
Yeah,
and then Mrs Clarke discovers something that is kind of drives her big arc in some ways, her personal one, and is actually very affecting, really. And then at the end, she basically forces herself into the TARDIS because she realizes that things have happened to her. There's a whole life out there and world, universe, and she doesn't want to waste it, and so she goes with it.
Benefits of time travel also.
Yeah, exactly. She can do it all and come back to where she left. And she always refers to insists to be called Mrs Clarke. But when she meets Flip, and when they pick her up in Quicksilver, I think is her debut. So Flip is sort of Rose Tyler-like, she's kind of a modern girl. She kind of has a, everyday job, but with the Doctor, it exceeds herself and excels and things. But her and Mrs Constance Clarke develop quite a nice relationship.
They do,
and she eventually lets Flip call her Connie, and so they have this really nice bond that develops. And then, like you were saying, Mrs Constance Clarke and her relationship with the Sixth Doctor. Obviously the Doctor is always the smartest person in the room, but Constance is on a level with him, albeit as a human. I think she's as brave and resourceful and clever and feisty, and will kind of give him as good as she gets, sort of thing.
Well, the Doctor's ego kind of gets the better of him, doesn't it? It almost kind of gets in the way of him seeing solutions and seeing things for what they are, which we saw elements of in the TV series, notably with Attack of the Cybermen, when he misjudges Lytton, because he's just a space mercenary and therefore evil and don't trust anything that he does, not aware that there's stuff going on in the background. And I like how a lot of that kind of plays out in the Big Finish audios. And you're right, Mrs Constance Clarke she doesn't have any of that going on with her at all. She sees things straight through as they are, and whilst her wider understanding, because of her lack of knowledge of the universe, and how things beyond her immediate world work, would kind of limit her to a degree, she nonetheless sees the truth of things very, very quickly, and is very, intuitive in that way.
There's another audio that is the Lovecraft invasion with Sixie, Constance, and Flip, and it involves H.P. Lovecraft, and he was purportedly an awful racist and everything, and it's quite a good bit of drama because he's an awful person, in many ways, but they need to save him to prevent what's happening, and my recollection of it, and I've only listened to this one once, I could be remembering wrong, but Constance is sort of slightly torn with, him being awful. I mean, they all are really, but particularly
the morality of it against the necessity to keep him alive for purposes,
and having to save someone who's that bad. So that was a good one as well. So highly recommend Crisscross. So that's my number 4. So I'm just going to move on to number 3 now.
What's your number 3 then?
So this is one called Like, which is part of the Sixth Doctor and Perry Adventures, which is an excellent box set. Okay. And it's labelled as Volume 1, but there's not been a number 2. I don't know whether there will ever be one. So they obviously planned for more, but this is a few years old now, so I would have thought a second volume, if they'd already done it, would have been out now. So in this particular story, the Doctor and Perry visit an Earth colony called Rusina, and there everyone wants to be popular on their socials. The more likes you get, the better your job promotion.
Oh, interesting. Bit of commentary going on there.
Yes, it's very topical, in our socially obsessed world. And I think it kind of does what sci-fi can do quite often, which is kind of holding up a mirror to our lives. So I won't kind of give more away on it, but it was a really good story, and I quite liked that. It felt like it could fit into the modern TV show.
Interesting.
Doing that kind of, not spoof, but looking at modern elements of the world and shows and stuff like that. So yeah, that's also a cracking story. So what's your number 4?
Number 4. I need to do a couple to catch up on you, but I'll make these really quick. Actually, my number 4. Ready? Because I'm showing these for you. For those of you who can't listen, Jeff doesn't know what they are, so I'm just going to creep it up into camera. Can you see that one?
What's that? Blood Tide. Ooh, there's a sea devil there.
It is. It's brilliant. This is Silurians. Basically,
oh yes, sorry, it is Silurians. Yeah.
It is Silurians, and I remember listening to this one in the car on my way home from work years and years ago, and it was a really stormy night. It was dark. It was wintry. Literally, it was almost like the oceans had turned upside down and been poured onto the land. It was brutal, and to the point where I actually had to kind of stop driving, grab a coffee from a service station. But then, because I was so invested in listening to the story, I didn't stay in the services. I went back to my car and just kind of listened to it when I was sat in there drinking my coffee and eating my pie. Right, and it was I don't know whether it's partly because of what was going on outside, right, or whether it was the atmospherics within the story, or whether it's both of those things combined that just made this one so memorable. It's a cracking good story anyway, on its own terms. It's there you go. Look at the synopsis for this. Thunderclouds roll across the skies, cloaking the land in darkness. The seas crash and boil as the rain turns to acid. The remnants of the Silurian race place themselves in suspended animation deep below the surface. The TARDIS has landed on the Galapagos Islands, and blah blah blah. Stuff happens, but stuff happens very very quickly in this. Right. And one of the best things about it, as well as the whole story and everything else, is that we get to see a Merker, right? Remember the pantomime horse creature from Warriors of the Deep, the Fifth Doctor story. And the Merker in this is magnificent. It is massive. It is Kraken-like. It is a Leviathan. It is fierce. It is brutal. It is ultra-destructive. And it kicks ass. It virtually destroys everything that it comes into contact with, and it's an absolute bitch to defeat, if indeed they do defeat it, but it's a cracking good story. It kind of it's also with Maggie Stables, who played Dr. Evelyn Smythe, one of the very early Colin Baker companions. The Big Finish paired him up with one of their, I think she might have been their first original companion, to come out, because obviously with the existing companions they have to fit within the timeline of of the TV stories. So everything that happens to Perry with the Fifth Doctor happens between Planet of Fire and Caves of Androzani. So she's had like a million stories that happen between those, between that, but it limits her. She's got to survive. Now she can go through things that change her personality, but they can't change her too much, because we know what she's like in the Caves of Androzani, right? She's she's still young, she's still inexperienced to a degree, so you're kind of limited if you don't want to stretch that fiction too far. I think they already have stretched it and shouldn't really worry about it, to be honest. But obviously with Dr. Evelyn Smythe, who's a much older person than Perry for sure, and has a lot more kind of worldly wisdom around her, and is someone else who won't take the Sixth Doctor's bluffs and brags very seriously. She will very quickly put him down. She's a great character, and of course they can do with her kind of what they like. They can take her story to wherever it's going to go, and I think, if memory serves, where it does go is pretty grim. But in Blood Tide we see the return of the Silurians. We've got Maggie Stables as Dr. Evelyn Smythe, and it's a cracking story by Jonathan Morris, who is an expert in Big Finish stories. So that is my number 4. Highly recommended to anyone if you haven't listened to it. It's an absolute blast, and it's epic. My number 4, this is an absolute classic. This is actually number 9 in the monthly range. So it's from Big Finish's first year, I think. It's from, from the year 2000. There you go. So it is written by Nicholas Pegg, and it stars Colin Baker as the Doctor. It stars Maggie Stables as Dr. Evelyn Smythe again, but it also stars Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier. It's the Spectre of Lanyon Moor. Again, this is really noticeable. Again, not only a great spooky story, which I'm sure because you like your spooky stories, so if you haven't listened to that, do listen to it, because it is brilliant. It will tick those boxes. But of course, we never got to see the Sixth Doctor and the Brigadier meet on TV. No. So this was kind of the very first Big Finish story, which started, I think, really to sort of address some of those little niggling holes in TV continuity. Obviously Nicholas Courtney was around back then, and it was great to get him back in with the Doctor. And the moment where they meet, I'm not going to spoil it again, but it's quite fabulous. Interestingly, I've got, is it this one up here? No, I've got it up there actually. There's So I think there's a Sixth Doctor missing adventure where they also do the same sort of thing, where they pair the Sixth Doctor up with the brig, to try and again to sort of address that gap. Or am I thinking of an Eighth Doctor one? Shadows of Avalon. What's that? No, that's Shadow in the Glass. Sorry, excuse me for a minute. No, it isn't this one. Yes, it is. Yeah, this is the one actually. Shadow in the Glass. Yeah, sorry, I'm just holding up a BBC Missing Adventure or Past Doctor Adventure, or whatever you're going to call them. And this was also a meeting with the Doctor and the Brigadier, written by Steve Cole and Justin Richards. So to be honest, I can't remember if this is like the first meeting, and this is an alternative first meeting for the two. But either way, Spectre of Lanyon Moor, highly recommended. It's a cracker, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to
go on then.
Give that
Where
a go.
Are we up to? Right. Number 2 for you,
This is my number 2. So this is Quinn Dilemma, which is fairly recent.
Ooh.
And I'm going to go out on a limb here. For me, this is maybe the best Sixth Doctor series of them all. So
really? Wow.
This series celebrates everything about the Sixth Doctor. All all incarnations of him, but all eras of him. So this is part of the
eras of the Sixth Doctor. The Sixth Doctor has multiple eras. Well, he kind of does in a way, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think each Doctor has, whether it's, with, Perry, Mel, Constance, so this is the first part of it's not, it's a complete story here, but it's the Big Finish 40th celebrations for the Sixth Doctor.
Right, yeah.
So there's another set like this, which is Trials of a Time Lord, which I haven't listened to yet, but I'm
it looks quite interesting,
very soon.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. So in this one, the Doctor and Mel are drawn via a temporal anomaly to
the old temporal anomaly.
Yes, this could be a signal or whatever. To Arunapal, which is a sort of medieval place. It's called Arunapal, Arunapal, something like that. And on this day when they arrive, the king is stepping down, and one of his 5 sons is going to become his successor. But to determine the winner, they're going to be put into a game of a hunting game, cat and mouse, and the one who catches the prize will be the one who takes the throne.
See, yeah, okay.
And for reasons that become clear later, the Doctor is the target, and the Doctor doesn't know why.
Yeah,
so across each instalment of this, the Doctor in each of it relevant time period and companions are drawn into the adventure to save the Doctor at his later point in life, and they end up uniting together, and it's sort of
right, interesting.
It's an Avengers kind of the Sixth Doctor. So you've got multiple Sixth Doctors at one point.
Oh my goodness!
All the companions, and this was the return of Lisa Greenwood, who plays Flip. As anyone who listeners might know, Lisa was very poorly for a long time with a very bad COVID situation, and was sort of temporarily written out of the Sixth Doctor audios. Flip was in a coma, and Lisa was just not able to record, and she kind of has now got herself well enough and is back out and about, and sort of made a triumphant return here, and it was fantastic to hear her again. So this is a big thrilling adventure. It's got dragons, Sontarans, fertile soil, which is quite important in one of the stories. The 5
fertile soil.
Yeah, the 5.
We all need it, mate.
Yeah, the 5 sons, the princes, are brilliant. They are ranging from kind of conniving to really dopey, and actually the whole set has got a lot of humour and heart and adventure into it, and it was really very funny. And there's some lovely stuff in it. It's fantastic. So yeah, Quinn Dilemma, check it out. It's the ultimate Sixth Doctor celebration.
Fantastic.
On audio.
Oh, yeah, I might give that a go actually. So what are we on? So that was your number 2.
That's my number 2. Yeah.
So shall I do my number 2 now then?
Yeah.
It is Davros. Ah, yeah. Now this is one of the. This was one of 3 stories that were released as a kind of special, not so much a box set, but they kind of were. It's kind of before Big Finish did box sets, but they would do these little series of things, which would actually be kind of a box set, I guess. So anyway, right, you had Davros, which is Terry Malloy and Colin Baker, who's we know are great buddies anyway, and it's basically the story told mostly from Davros's perspective of how he became the person he is, way back when, and primarily kind of what happened to him between Resurrection of the Daleks and when we saw him again in Revelation of the Daleks. So Resurrection was the 5th Doctor story, right? So there's a lot of kind of continuity involved in this, if you like. So it's like what can I say? So at the end of Destiny of the Daleks, I'm going way back in before then now. There's the whole Mavellan War thing, right, kicking off between the Daleks and the Movellans, obviously, right? So that leads the Movellans to develop a kind of sort of Dalek bioweapon, or bioweapon which destroys Daleks, which we saw play out to a degree in Resurrection of the Daleks, right? It's when they all kind of went gooey and everything else. At the end of that, Davros is kind of imprisoned and placed in stasis, right, for a trip back to wherever. Basically, the Movellans take him off somewhere, and then we don't see him again in TV story until we see him as the Great Healer in Revelation of the Daleks, facing off with the Sixth Doctor. So, but so a lot of this is kind of told from Davros's perspective. It's his story, really. But there's a great moment in there where, because a lot of it is he's telling the Doctor this. There's, one of the best things about stories that feature Davros is when he and the Doctor get together and they have these big moral conversations, that kind of explode outwards or force us to kind of think about certain aspects of, certain moralities, I guess, and dilemmas that don't have an easy answer. And there's a lot of that in this story. It's really tremendous. I'm not really doing it justice. It's one of those. It is largely a conversation piece, right? Which sounds really boring, but it isn't. It's absolutely riveting. And if you enjoy those conversations between Davros and the Doctor, there is no better one than what you get with this. And I keep trying to say this, but I keep deflecting myself. But there is a moment. I'm going to get to the end of this. There is a moment in here where Davros is recounting that period that he was in stasis, and it's centuries, right? And there's the Doctor kind of assumes that for most of that he wasn't aware of what was going on and everything. And Terry Malloy just breaks it in Davros's most kind of sympathetic voice, but also most cruel voice. It's got a steel to it. It's got that edge to it, where he says he was aware for every second of that internment. And just the way he drops it in, I remember it just sent, and I've listened to this a few times since, and every time it sends shivers down my spine, even just saying it right now, and I'm not even doing it any justice at all. It's incredible that the whole story of Davros is recounted in here, and the playoff between him and the Doctor, and the reason the Doctor is involved in this. I'm absolutely not going to spoil it. If you've listened to this, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, and you'll know why this is so spectacular, why it's such a brilliant audio on every level. It uses the best that audio can do for us. I always think, it's great when in audio that we can imagine these giant vistas, these big sets that couldn't possibly be created on TV without a massive CGI budget, especially back in 2000 and whenever it was that this was out, 2003. Crikey, I didn't realise it was that old. It's like 21 years old. Blimey. Yeah. So certainly, couldn't have done anything like that. But I think audio is also at its best when, or probably more at its best for me anyway, when it's just a few people in a room, and I don't mean talky, but it's that kind of radio drama. Radio drama for me is brilliant when it focuses on characters rather than trying to recreate big, giant, epic scale events. I love it when it does that, and we get the soundscape filling in, and, all kind of adds, and Big Finish are brilliant at that. But when they bring it in, and it's much more intimate, and it's just a playoff, and it's literally just two characters in this, the Doctor and Davros, and it is just mesmerising. So it's just brilliant. They did a few of these. So there was Davros, there was Omega, and there was the Master as well. So the Master was with Sylvester McCoy's Doctor, the Seventh Doctor, and Omega was with the Fifth Doctor, I believe. And each one of those kind of are big character studies on those villains. Why are they the way they are? And what's going on now, and why is the Doctor involved? So very, very highly recommended if you haven't. So,
really good.
So that is my number 2 Sixth Doctor story.
Okay. So my number 1
dun, 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 is
Static.
Yes, I knew it.
So
brilliant.
This is a creepy story with
you do like the creepy, don't you?
Sixie, Flip, and Mrs Constance Clarke, and they go to a caravan site.
I've listened to this one again on your recommendation. I did enjoy it a lot.
So at this caravan site, people can go visit the old stone circle that was used for human sacrifice. Apparently, it's in the woods nearby, and there's also an old RAF research station that was used for secretive things in the war. And at the caravan site, there's only one rule: no radios, no cassette recorders, and no portable TVs. And the reason for this is because of the ghosts. And this story takes kind of a British holiday classic scenario, making it scary. And I can't remember when it's set, but it's radios, cassette recorders and stuff, so it's not kind of super, modern day. But it takes that sort of thing of, today when you go somewhere you've got no mobile signal, and you are
literally isolated, cut off from civilization. I think the guy who runs the caravan site is a bit of it's a lot to do with why he does that, but he's also a kind of he seems initially, at least anyway, as sort of someone who's very stuck in their ways, and not having technology and none of that sort of thing. But there's a reason, as you said, for him being like that way, which is central. The
revelation, behind it all is really good. It's a really kind of spooky story, and it has quite a lot for Flip and particularly Constance to do in it as well. So I highly recommend that one. It's great.
So that's your number one. That's a good one, actually. I kind of thought it might be, because I know you like the spooky stuff. So okay, so my number one. I have talked about this quite a lot, actually, because I'm always raving about it. And weirdly, I think I've only listened to it maybe twice in the last 20-odd years, because this is another very, very early one. I'll tell you now, this is number 6 in Big Finish's monthly range. It's another one with Maggie Stables, and it's written by Jack Rayner. It's the Marion Conspiracy.
Is that
Look
on
at
tape?
that. Yes, I'm holding up here, listeners, if you can't see this, right? This is a tape cassette, something that people who were born in the last, 20 years would never have seen. Look at that. A tape cassette. There's 2 of these in there. That's one of them. And the other one is in there as well. But yeah, look at this, right? This is because, right, there you go. That's the other one. This is because, right, back in the day when I started listening to these, I did initially buy them on CD. But what I used to do was I used to listen to them because I just started a new job. And I had to go. It meant I was spending a lot of nights in hotels. So I was going up on the train, and I was in a hotel, and it was all just being away from home. So I had a few CDs, and I'd play them in the hotel on my laptop, right, with headphones on and stuff. But then I thought, well, why don't I just take my Walkman, right? Because I didn't have a portable CD player. I didn't want to buy one because they were always jigging around. They were not reliable. So I had I bought tapes to go in my Walkman so I could listen to them on the train on the way up. And then when I got a company car, and that didn't have a CD player because it was rubbish. And actually, not many did back then, right? We're talking like 2000. CD players in cars were still relatively high end. So, but it did have a tape deck in it. So again, the tapes were quite useful. And then I think within 6 months, I upgraded to a car that had a CD player. So I've got about 4 stories, which are just on tape. This is one of them. Red Dawn is another one. I can't remember the others, but there's a few of them. Jeff has left us. You there?
No, I'm back now.
You're back.
What's going on with this?
I don't know. Let's just make sure you're still recording. People. Yeah, it's still recording. Well, hopefully it won't have affected the. It'll still be there, but you have to. Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so go from the bit where you were saying about you had a number of stories on tape.
I can't remember what I was going to say now. You probably just cut it there. So. So yeah, I've got a few stories on tape. There's about 3 or 4 of these, which I either played on my Walkman or in the car at the time. And like I said, eventually they were all CDs after that. So there's not many of them, but I do wonder how much these are kind of going for now. Probably like £1 or something. I don't know, but it's difficult because the thing is, and this is one of the reasons why I haven't listened to it for a long time, because I've got nothing to play it on now. I think actually I do still have my Walkman somewhere. It's buried in some junk in my loft, but that would make that Walkman about 30 years old, because it was 10 years old. I'd had it at school, in the year 2000, so it was at least 10 years old by then. So I've no idea if it kind of works now or whatever, but I might dig it out and find it. But back to the story. I mean, there's not much that Jack Rayner's written that I haven't enjoyed. I think she's just got a fantastic take on Doctor Who, and she is, without doubt, one of the most consistently brilliant storytellers over the stuff that she works on for Doctor Who and other stuff as well. You know, I was listening to some Blake Seven audio about a year ago because I love Blake Seven, and she wrote a story there involving one of the characters that was just beautiful. It was so identifiably Blake Seven. It was just unreal. You know, it could have been lifted out of the 1980 series or something. But you know, and that's very much a trademark of the Marian Conspiracy, because this is a true historical. There's no spaceships, there's no lasers, there's no time meddlers, there's nobody from the future, the past, or whatever. You know, everything that happens is within that time period. You know, specifically, it's Queen Mary, basically. You know, I'm not going to, that whole Tudor thing of how Queen Mary was kind of vilified, and the whole sort of burning of. She was burning the Protestants. The other lot were burning the Catholics, and both sides kind of hated each other. So that whole religious war going in, eventually, Mary came off the worst for it. But this is essentially Game of Thrones, right? Game of Thrones is pretty much that whole time period made fantasy, right? It's like the War of the Roses, the war between the Lancastrians and the House of York. It's that, and this is very much of that kind of writing quality. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's better. It's just fantastic. If you don't think you enjoy historical stories in Doctor Who, right? You probably haven't listened or watched the right ones, because most of them are astonishingly good. Things like the Massacre, for example, the Crusades. Right from the first Doctor's era, when there were many, many more of those. They are among the pinnacle of Doctor Who, in my opinion. And the Marian Conspiracy is absolutely right up there with them. We may not have seen it on TV, but that by no means diminishes the power of the storytelling within that audio there. It is phenomenally good. The characters are so well drawn. The story is absolutely magnetic. You can't stop listening to it once it kicks in, and it kicks in very quickly. And it's performed throughout by everybody with absolute brilliance. It is the pinnacle for me of Sixth Doctor audios on Big Finish.
I have to give that one a listen.
You have to. You must, otherwise I can't talk to you again. How can we even communicate if you don't listen to that? Very, 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 very highly recommended.
Okay.
The Marian Conspiracy by Jack Rayner.
Brilliant. Well, we also have some top fives from some of our listeners.
Oh, yeah,
well.
Let's have a listen.
So, Geek to Me Radio says The Wormery.
Oh,
Project...
yes.
Do you know that one?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that was very nearly on my list.
Oh, really? Project Lazarus, The Wishing Beast, Davros, and then Project Lazarus again. Maybe they really, really like that one.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Oscar Groucho says Paul Cornell's wonderful 100 Days of the Doctor. It's a love letter to Colin, his growth at Big Finish, and the evolution of his portrayal. A rollicking mystery and progenitor to a large number of themes in Jodie's era: identity, acceptance, morality. A single episode with so much to give.
Brilliant.
And then Dave Crowley says, my fave is The Brink of Death, stunning regeneration episode that made me cry like a baby. The end line of Six's hero arc. It's so beautiful. Carl Morries says, my favourite is Doctor Who and the Pirates, or The Lass That Lost a Sailor.
Yes, love it.
Jack Rayner. A brilliant story that may seem silly at first, but deals with grief, guilt, and the Doctor singing. An emotional and powerful story. Paul Dunn says The Marian Conspiracy, The Spectre of Lanyon Moor, Whispers of Terror, Medicinal Purposes.
Oh, yes.
And Davros.
Yeah.
Gareth Bowley says Whispers of Terror.
Indeed,
number one. Marian Conspiracy. The One Doctor. Project Twilight. And The Spectre of Lanyon Moor.
Yeah.
Andrew, I always think I get his surname wrong. Hseih. Andrew on sea air is
Apologies,
his username.
Andrew, if that is in no way resembles your surname.
Can you let us know how to pronounce that? So apologies. Andrew says, in no particular order, The Curse of Davros, Mind of the Hodiak, Jubilee, Breaking Bubbles and Other Stories, and The Lure of the Nomad.
Ooh.
And Marcus Cotton says Patient Zero at number 1, Arrangements for War, Marian Conspiracy, Static, excellent, and The Reaping at number 5.
Oh yeah, The Reaping, that's another good one.
Matt V says Legend of the Cybermen at number 1, Plight of the Pimpernel, which is a fairly recent one with Perry, Scorched Earth, Static, and Arrangements for War. And Luke Sims Jenkins says The Condemned at number 1, Davros at 2, and The Pirates at 3, The Space Race at 4, and The Wormery at 5.
Some really good ones there.
Some really good ones, yeah.
So what almost made your list then, Jeff? What runner-ups do you have? A few from there?
Let me just go to my Big Finish thing, and I can tell you. Hang on.
Because there's some good titles in those, which kind of make my sort of secondary list, if you like.
So I would also put in the 11, which is Sixth Doctor and Constance, and it involves the 11, which is a Time Lord who has all of his past regeneration personalities, minds active within him. So he's like a multiple personality, and he's like, some of them are really cruel and horrible, some of them are sort of a bit silly and a bit wimpy, but mostly he's just an evil bastard. So he's a great character. So I'm just scrolling through my list here. The Curse of Davros, I've listened to that, also very good.
I haven't listened to that one, actually.
There's one called Blood on Santa's Claw, which was a free download that they did a little while ago, which is got Perry in as well. And that was actually a really good, slightly sort of, if I remember right, horror-tinged story there. Lovecraft Invasion that I mentioned was really good. And just going through my list here. God, I've got loads of other stuff as well. I've got the Maltese Penguin to listen to as well. Cry of the Vulturous, very good. There's loads of stuff. I've got the Middle to listen to. I need to check that out at the moment as well. The things like Quinn Dilemma and 11 and the Adventures with Perry are multiple story things. So I've been listening to a lot more of those in the last couple of years than I have kind of monthly range stuff. So
I must admit I haven't listened to a few for a while, apart from The Last Adventure. There's some interesting things on there actually. So my sort of secondary list, if you like, comprises some of those. So we've got these two are quite interesting actually. Year of the Pig and Peer Pressure. These are quite good stories. The Year of the Pig is a weird story. It's one of those where I didn't quite know what to expect from it, and what I expected was completely different from what it turned out to be. So that was quite interesting. And also another one where I think it's written by Matthew Sweet, right? Who is quite well known in Doctor Who circles, and it features Maureen O'Brien, who was Vicky for the first Doctor. It features Michael Keating, who was Villa in Blake 7 and played a character in Doctor Who and the Sunmakers. It features Adjo Ando and Paul Brook, and obviously Nicola Bryant as Perry. And it's a really twisty, turny story. It's very highly recommended. Peer Pressure, very, very spooky. Did you say The Maltese Penguin? Another one with Frobisher on there as well, back in his kind of private eye. Whispers of Terror, which is like number 3. I was thinking it's number 2, but it's not. It's number 3. Number 3 in Bigfoot. So that's like years old. Jubilee and a few others. And I have to mention two more. The Holy Terror, which is another Frobisher story, which is just, my goodness me. That is something else, The Holy Terror.
Is it?
I remember, when I said I used to, this again goes back to when I started that new job back in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And I used to listen to these in the hotel on my laptop with the headphones on in a dark room on my own, because I was Billy No Mates at the time. And the atmosphere and the absolute creepiness and the fucking scares in that story are just incredible. It's unbelievable. It is absolute nightmare fuel. It's written by Robert Shearman, right, who wrote Dalek and who also wrote Jubilee, which was this one again, which is another one I listened to on my own in a hotel. But I have to mention the final one of those is Real Time, which is I think is at least the conclusion of Dr. Evelyn Smythe's story. And notice also it features the Sixth Doctor in his blue coat, right? So that was another thing that came in during these Big Finish adventures. The Doctor's moved away from that kind of hodgepodge colour car. I think there was a reason for it, because Real Time was a webcast audio adventure, so it was accompanied by some slightly, what was it with the Flash? Was it Flash they used? I think back in the day, they had Death Comes to Time, which was animated by Flash, and they had Real Time, and I think they did a Paul McGann version, an Eighth Doctor version of Sharda as well, which might have been after Real Time. But Real Time was the same kind of thing. So it was broadcast across the internet, produced by Big Finish, performed by the usuals, and it was animated with Flash. And of course, animating the Doctor's multicoloured coat at that point would have been really difficult, time-consuming and everything else. Yeah. So they just made it all blue, and but also used that as a kind of expression of how the Doctor's personality had kind of matured through the audios. Because, of course, that's the thing that comes out of when you talk about the Sixth Doctor in audio. That's the big thing that comes through, is how his character has changed, isn't it? So we didn't see that on TV because his whole story was cut short. But of course, through Big Finish, we've seen that play out and play through, and we've even come out the other side of it. And it's wonderful as well how that kind of goes right through the entirety of the Sixth Doctor's kind of era, and ties in or wraps everything up with a brilliant epic in a regeneration arc of series of stories. So The Last Adventure.
Sorry, did you say The Last Adventure?
I did, Jeff. I said The Last Adventure.
Oh. What's that then?
Oh, well, let me tell you. It's this thing right here, my friend. Yes, indeed. It is Colin Baker's regeneration story. Because again, we didn't see this on TV. No. We saw some nonsense with Sylvester McCoy in a wig being kind of picked or scooped up off the TARDIS floor by a big hairy hand of a Tetrap or whatever the hell it was, right? So we never saw that. It was ridiculous. And of course, when we spoke to Colin, if you'll recall, he said to us that actually he's still the Doctor because he never actually regenerated, at least on TV. But he was talking about The Last Adventure. We had a bit of a chat about this, and I hadn't listened to it at the time, and I don't really know why. It's more partly because I don't have a huge amount of time, and this is quite a commitment, and I wanted to give it the time that it deserved, I think, because there are 4 stories in here, and they're all kind of interlinked, and they all climax in the final story, which I think, as one of our listeners had pointed out there as his favourite, was The Brink of Death, which is by Nick Briggs. But so you've essentially got 4 stories in this collection. So we've got The End of the Line, which kind of opens the whole thing up, and it starts off, actually, it's one of my favourite kind of settings, and it starts off with people being lost on a train platform. And on a train, and there's a fog that kind of encapsulates or surrounds the whole thing, and it's very much a microcosm of just a few characters. There's nobody else from the outside world. There's some passengers who are there for various reasons, and and they exist in kind of, it looks like they exist in multiple points in time or in parallel universes, I think, as it eventually kind of plays out. I've got to admit that the big reveal as to the big bad behind this, or the sort of secondary big bad. There's a big bad overall, which I'm going to tell you now because it's right there. It's the Valeyard, right? That's who the Doctor is facing off against throughout this whole thing. But there is a secondary evil villain below the Valeyard who thinks he's the one who's manipulating these events. He's not, obviously. It's the Valeyard. He's doing it on behalf of the Valeyard. There's a bit of a kind of a play-off at the end of that, and I must admit that part of the story I found less satisfying than the lead up to it. I thought the lead up to it, the build up was brilliant, but the actual payoff I thought was a little bit kind of mustache twirly villain, blah, blah, blah. Doctor, welcome to my evil plan. Now you will fail and you shall die, Doctor, die. I think they actually do say that at some point as well.
Really?
But nonetheless, there you go. There's the Red House by Alan Barnes. Now, this is really weird, actually, because, I play these on my Big Finish app, which is the new Big Finish app, right? Not the old Big Finish. And I wish I'd played it on the old Big Finish app. Sorry, Big Finish, but you know as well as anybody else that you've had issues with this, right? So this is me. For the most part, it was fine. It was brilliant. But for some reason, it played the third story in the sequence before the second one. So the third story is Stage Fright, which involves Professor Lightfoot and Henry Gordon Jago from the Talons of Wen Chiang, and obviously the Lightfoot and Jago series. And I could listen to them forever. They're brilliant. Oh, just by the way, the train station story features Mrs Constance Clarke, and I think it was recorded very early on, if not actually before she started recording the main range with Colin. It's I started listening to the behind the scenes, and from what I'm picking up, it was round about that sort of time. Or certainly it was written without anybody knowing really fully who Constance Clarke really was, right? So
really?
Anyway, so the Big Finish app decided to play story number 3 ahead of story number 2. So story number 3 is very much the Valeyard, right, front and centre, and some bizarre scheme involving a theatre. So obviously Henry Jago is involved, and there's some really weird stuff going on. Not going to lie, I didn't get any of it. I thought, what the blazes am I listening to? There are some really great moments in it, but I just thought, I just don't buy any of this at all. I don't know. Just me, really, because I think it's actually pretty good. The Red House, now, actually, this was one that I probably preferred. I enjoyed the least out of all 4 of these. The Red House features, it's kind of a take on werewolves. So, normally you got like werewolves, they're humans, but the full moon comes on and they turn into wolves, right? And go off on a killing rampage and slaughter sheep and people and what have you. This is kind of reverse of that. So they're wolves who become humans. Sci-fi.
Okay.
I'm not going to lie, I just didn't enjoy that one at all. But the final one, The Brink of Death, is truly epic. Now, this is the full conclusion of all of those. So I might as well just say that each one of these stories features the Doctor with a different companion from his reign. So the first one, The End of the Line, is with Constance Clarke. The Red House is with Charlotte Pollard, who is at that point, the Sixth Doctor, doesn't know, in quotation fingers, who she is. I think he kind of does, right? Even at this point in it, and he's kind of twigging her along, but she's like, I can't tell him who I am. It's that sort of stage in their journey. So that's quite brilliant, from that point. And I do love India Fisher as Charlie Pollard. I think she's brilliant. I listen to her all day, which is why I watch MasterChef more than anything. So that's good. So, and then The Brink of Death is with the Doctor and Mel. So we've got Bonnie Langford back in, and it turns out they're trying to avoid the planet Lacertia or the Lacertian system because there's some radiation going on there, which is apparently dangerous also, or not dangerous, but actually dangerous, but not dangerous. It's a bit vague as to what it actually is, but nonetheless, that's what kind of does at the end of the story, and they end up on Lacertia at the start of Time and the Rani. So the whole thing of that is a big face-off between the Valeyard and the Doctor, and it's very. The initial premise is brilliant because the Doctor and the Valeyard kind of swap places, or the Valeyard becomes the Doctor. And there's a moment in the TARDIS when the Doctor and Mel are having a conversation, and the Doctor we know is suddenly sucked away and replaced by the Valeyard, but Mel doesn't notice the difference. The Doctor has always been the Doctor, has always been the Valeyard for her, right? So there's a huge shift in the whole, time thing, right? The Doctor then wakes up in a dark room, and Colin plays it like he's absolutely terrified.
Really?
Oh, it's brilliant. It's like, where am I? And it's cold and I can't see anything. I've got no idea what's going on, what happened. And he kind of meets up with, at the same time, there's an investigation by the CIA, the Celestial Intervention Agency, the Time Lord Special Ops division, before we had the division, right? Yeah. So they're investigating something. Turns out they're investigating a space station, which the Sixth Doctor is on. But he's only got 6 minutes to live. He's just got a window of 6 minutes, which he has to try and figure out what the hell's going on. First off, he's got to try and recruit the CIA agent, right? Who's very much a kind of, Jobsworth don't really care, mate, what's going on. Yeah, whatever. She's obnoxious to her boss, who's very much a process-driven gatekeeper, and she's like, yeah, whatever. And the only reason the Doctor manages to enlist her help is because she wants to piss off her superiors, basically. So that relationship is very cagey, and that turns out to have consequences for the Doctor that he never foresaw. And I won't spoil that at all. But it's very much So the Doctor has this 6-minute window, goes back, has to try and confront the Valeyard, figure out what's going on, and then suddenly finds himself back in his room, but with less time available. Now he's only got 4 minutes, and it's counting down to his death each time he goes back. But each time he meets the Valeyard, it's like a different point in the adventure. So we'll be like either at the end of the adventure, or at the start of the adventure, or somewhere in the middle, or at somewhere in between, or even at an alternative point within that whole timeline. It's it needs focus to work it out, but it's actually presented. It's presented without obfuscation, right? It's actually quite clear when you do focus what's going on. Admittedly, yes, I did have to rewind 30 seconds or a couple of minutes just to get it in my head, but that's more because I really have trouble, listening to things when I'm sat still, because I can't sit still, so I've got to be doing something. So that makes it difficult for me to focus on listening to Big Finish, which is why I can listen to it when I was driving, but I wasn't driving with this. So anyway, it's definitely worth a watch. And the final moments are really genuinely moving. Colin Baker's kind of soliloquy as he faces his death right at the end, because that's what's going to happen. Oh man, it's just beautiful. It is the moment that had been prepared for. Yeah. You know what I mean? And there's a little cameo from somebody else. I won't say who, because it's just such a beautiful moment, and it was so surprising. And yet it makes perfect sense, for him to be there. So it's astonishingly good. I mean, I might not have got along with the other adventures, certainly 2 and particularly 3. I kind of lost patience. But certainly all of that is made up for on the final story, The Brink of Death. And I do think, Nick Briggs is one of the very best writers of Big Finish. I think he seems to avoid the cliches. He seems to avoid that, if he does do a moustache twirling confrontation between the Doctor and the big bad, he does it in a way that makes it feel natural to the story. It makes it feel fresh, and there's a reason for it to be that way. With other times when other people do it, it just seems to be, well, this is part of a formula. Curses, Doctor, you foil my plans. Blah, ha, ha, I'll get you back for this. And next time, if there'll be a next time, you wicked villain. It's just, how many times does that happen at the end of a Big Finish? Oh my God. It might have been okay in the 1970s to have that, but come on, do something different. So Nick Briggs does do different things with his stories, and and this one is wonderfully rewarding, and it is the perfect fitting end for Sixie. Does
it tie in with where the regeneration happens on the show?
Yes, it does, because it finishes at the point where time in the Rani picks up. Okay. So why the TARDIS is in that area of space. You kind of know what's happening, and even to the point where the TARDIS doors open and the Tetrap walks in. I think it goes, I might have imagined that bit actually, because I'm filling it in as I'm kind of listening to it. So, but either way, it's very closely knitted into that point. Good. So it makes perfect sense. Yeah. Definitely worth it, mate. And to be fair, those other stories, one I said I didn't like, I think it's more of a me problem than anything else. So it's just horses for courses, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like them.
But definitely, and I'm really glad I've got it in this limited really edition. Nice. What's that? Yeah. Number 5,879 of 10,000. So only 10,000 of these were ever produced. So that'll be worth a tenner now. So there you go. Almost as much as I paid for it.
I just looked it up as well. Yeah, it's 20 odd quid still at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there's a few quid more than I paid for it. Then that's an investment. There you go. Yeah. But it's good, and I'm glad this is cases like this, the sort of special casing, and it comes in. It's almost like a book. It's really beautiful. If I just open it up there, you can kind of see. The CDs are on this side, and we've got little. There's a sort of. I mean, it's very difficult to read because it's actually quite tightly bound. But there's, what we got? We got pictures. We got stories. behind the scenes text and things, something to read as well as listen to. So it's wonderful.
The 10th Doctor ones like that, and they did Light at the End like that in that
yes,
book form.
yeah, I've got Light at the End actually somewhere else over there, but
yeah, they don't really do it like that anymore, because I was hoping that for the 13th Doctor stuff they were going to do something special for that, but
I think it's quite costly, isn't it? To produce those things.
So. And it's fair enough that they're not doing it. Right, this has been really good to dive into some Sixth Doctor audio, and we're not done with our Sixth Doctor celebrations yet.
Oh no, we've got a bit more to do yet.
More stuff to come, and this has definitely given me some older audios to check out that I haven't listened to before, so I'm going to get stuck into those once I've listened to
Good on you, mate.
of a Time Lord. And give that.
And I need to listen to more Constance Clarke.
Yes,
because she's brilliant, and she is really, really good.
Yeah. Right. Thank you everyone who contributed with their top fives. Massively appreciated. Thanks as always for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Who Corner to Corner.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye for now.